Good morning, this is Mr. Morales, and today I'm going to be explaining the first of the 3 weeks exams review. Now, I apologize in advance. My computer that I'm recording this on is kind of old and the memory is low, so sometimes it'll break up these videos into multiple videos and it might cut off in the middle of an explanation. So please bear with me, and I do apologize in advance. So without saying any more, let's go ahead and get right through this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to explain this review with the use of the TI Nspire. Because you are allowed to use it, I'm going to use it whenever possible and assume that you guys will also use it on the test. All the functions on the calculator are allowed on the test. So let's go ahead and look at our first 3 problems here. We're asked to solve for the following. So here we have some equations in one single variable, and we're asked us to find the value of each variable. What we're going to do with the Nspire is go ahead and use nsolve. So in case you forget, menu 3, 1 is the combination, the key switch combination to get nsolve. So my calculator is turned on. I go to menu 3 for algebra class, 1 for numerical solve. Now I go ahead and just type in my equation. So I have 2/5 x minus 7, equals 13. Now, after you type in your equation, remember to always put comma, which is on the bottom left hand of your keyboard, and then the variable that you're solving for, in this case, x. And I get an answer of x equal to 50. I'll go ahead and repeat this process for the next 2 questions as well. So now I have 10, and I believe that is plus 6a, which makes more sense, equals 1/2, parentheses, negative 4a plus 20 minus 18. So I'm going to go ahead and type that into nsolve exactly as is. So menu 3, 1 again, 10 plus 6a, and you can use any variable you want when you're using nsolve, as long as you're only using one variable. Oops, backwards. 6a, and then I need to put equals, all right, and then 1/2. There we go. Right arrow, parentheses, negative 4a plus 20 minus 18. Comma, I'm solving for a in this case, so comma a. Enter, I get negative 2.25. So a equals negative 2.25. Now, let's say that since everything is in either whole number or fractional form, let's say we wanted the fractional form of negative 2.25. So what you can then do is go to menu, 2 for number, let me backtrack a little bit. So what we want to do is type in negative 2.25, the decimal that we want to change into a fraction, and then we go into menu, 2 for number, and 2 for approximate to fraction. You're going to get this little wordy explanation afterwards. Don't worry about it, just press enter. And now you have the fractional form. It's an improper fraction, but still a fraction of what a is equal to, in this case, negative 9/4. So you have the decimal and the fraction form. This depends on what the question is asking for. So you need to be a little versatile in how you explain your answer. And finally, we have number 3 for the top using nsolve. In this case, we have 6 times b plus 3 plus 12b equals 72. So using nsolve again, menu 3, 1, I'm going to type in 6 parentheses b plus 3, close the parentheses, plus 12b equals 72, and then comma b, because I'm solving for the variable b. And I get an answer of b equals 3. All right, so there's the first 3 done, pretty easy with nsolve. You could go ahead and do it manually, but that will take more time, and you are pretty much limited to 1 class period for this test, so you might as well use the technology. Now the next ones don't really use any technology because we are going to be solving for a variable. And what they want us to do is basically just isolate the variable from each formula or equation to get it by itself. So our first formula here is a equals b times c times d, and they want us to isolate or solve for d. So I look at the variable and I say, what is happening to d? D is being multiplied by b and c together. So the opposite of multiplying times b and c would be to divide by b and c. You can bring them together because they're both being multiplied to give you some amount. When I do that, on the left I have a divided by bc, equal sign comes down. The b and the c both cancel out to 1, and then I have equals the letter d, which is what I wanted. There's no further solving to do because I have no further information. Next, I have number 5. A bit of information was left out. You have 2 variables and they don't tell you which one they want. So for this one, they do want you to solve for y. So go ahead, get that there. All right, so to get y by itself in this equation, I'm going to go ahead and subtract this 9x from both sides. Because it's a positive 9x, I can get rid of it or undo it just by applying its opposite. So 9x minus 9x on the left side cancels out to 0, and I have a negative 3y equals, and then I have 18 minus 9x. But I'm going to go ahead and put the variable first. So what I have is a negative 9x in this case, with the positive 18 trailing along. Because usually we like to have equations with variables first and then constants at the end. Y is still not by itself, so I'll divide everything by negative 3. Negative 3 divided by negative 3 gives me 1y. Negative 9 divided by negative 3 gives me a positive 3x. And positive 18 divided by negative 3 gives me a negative 6. So there is my equation for y. And number 6, I have the circumference formula. They want me to get the radius r all by itself. Just like in number 4, radius is being multiplied times pi, which is just a number, and 2, which is obviously just a number. So I can go ahead and undo this multiplication with division. I'll divide by the two things I want to get rid of from the right-hand side, which is 2 and pi, and I apply that to both sides, and I end up with circumference divided by 2 times pi equals, these cancel out to 1, and I'm left with just my single r, or my radius, left over. So there's 4, 5, and 6. Let's keep going with the next two. They behave in a similar fashion. Now for y, they want me to get this inequality solved for y. So I'll go ahead and kind of do, well, pretty much do the same thing I did for number 5. It's just a two-step equation, or inequality in this case. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this positive 2x, because I want to get y by itself. So a positive 2x can be undone with a minus 2x on both sides of my inequality in this case. So 2x, take away 2x from the left side, cancels out to 0, and I'm left with this negative 4y less than, and remember I like to have my variables first, so I have a minus 2x or a negative 2x with this positive 16 all on the right hand side. Now I need to divide by a negative 4. And here's one of the big ideas for when you're dealing with inequalities. Whenever you divide or multiply the left and the right side by a negative number, your sign's going to flip directions. So negative 4 goes into negative 4 1y time. My sign flips directions. Negative 2 over negative 4 simplifies to the fraction positive 1/2, and the x is just hanging out with it, traveling along. Then I have a positive 16 divided by a negative 4, which gives me a negative 4. So there's my inequality solved for y. And finally, number 8 in this series, we have 7x plus 2y is less than 8, and they also once again wants us to solve for y. So just like before, I have a positive 7x I want to remove. I'll do that with a minus 7x on both sides of my inequality. As I do that, the 7x is go to 0, and I have 2y that falls down. My less than symbol falls down. And remember, I like to have inequalities first, so negative 7x with that positive y trailing along from above. Now I divide everything by a positive 2. Because I'm dividing by a positive number in this case and not a negative, the sign will not flip, so I get y, or 1y, because the 2 divided by 2 gives you 1, is less than half of negative 7 would be negative 3.5. I'll go ahead and make it a, well, I guess I can just leave it as negative 7/2. I don't really need to change it to a decimal. So negative 7/2 x plus 8 divided by 2, which is 4, positive 4. I left it as a fraction because everything is a whole number and there's really no point in turning into a decimal. Now, that is 4 through 8 literal equations. It's just moving stuff around. If you need help, of course, come in the morning for tutoring. Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, Mr. Morales. Tuesday and Thursdays, Mr. Velasquez. Going on, we have some inequality.